The last time we were together in episode 73, we walked into Integration Nation. We talked about how you're not a collection of broken pieces, but a living, breathing ecosystem where the Shadow Queen, Inner Critic, and Divine Guide actually want to work together. We named the fragmentation, we named the masks, we named the parts you've tried to exile, and we invited them back home. Beautiful, necessary. But here's the part your soul already knows and your nervous system might be slightly freaking out about. Integration rarely feels like spa music and soft lighting. It often arrives as disruption. You know this, as chaos, as the moment when you're staring at your life thinking, what on earth is happening to me right now? So, today's mindfuck is this. What if the disruption you're resisting is the medicine you've been praying for? What if the chaos you're trying to control is actually the cure? This is the disruption you secretly crave, why chaos is sometimes the cure. And guess what, guys? This one belongs 100% to your Shadow Queen. So let's talk about her. The Shadow Queen is that archetype in you that refuses to keep performing in a life that no longer fits. She's not here for your people-pleasing, your polite self-abandonment, or your I'm fine costumes. When she walks into the room, things shake. Structures crack. Identities wobble. Not because she's cruel, but because she is loyal to your truth. If you've ever pulled the throne retrieval card from the Shadow Queen Oracle, you already know this energy. That card does not come in whispering. It shows up as a summons. You've drifted from your throne, and life starts rearranging itself to get you back in alignment. Sacred Rage, the Unmasking, Throne Retrieval, those are not cute cards. They are invitations to disruption. Now, here's where it gets tricky. Your inner critic hates disruption. She wants predictability, control, safety, and certainty. She would rather you stay in a familiar cage than walk toward an unknown door. So when the Shadow Queen starts rattling the bars, your inner critic narrates it as failure. Everything's falling apart. You're messing it all up. You had a good thing going and now you're ruining it. Sound familiar? But from the Divine Guide's vantage point, that same moment looks quite different. The Divine Guide sees the timeline stretching out in front of you and whispers, we cannot build where the lies still stand. We cannot plant in concrete. Something has to crack, so something true can grow from it. One identity sees chaos. One identity sees collapse. One identity sees initiation. Same moment, different lens. So let's ground this in something real. Maybe you've had a season where suddenly you can't tolerate your job anymore. Nothing's changed on paper, but your body is loud. Your Sundays are filled with dread. Your creativity has disappeared. You start making little mistakes that you've never made before. Missing deadlines, snapping at coworkers. Maybe you're just forgetting a lot of things. The old you would label that as failing, burning out, being ungrateful. But what if that disruption is medicine? What if your system is starting to reject the version of you that stays small? Or maybe you've had friendships or relationships where everything gets crunchy. The conversations aren't landing like they used to. You can't fake your way through dinners that you've outgrown. You start saying what you actually feel instead of what keeps the peace. And suddenly there are arguments, confrontations, or maybe you're experiencing distance. Old you, I'm ruining everything. I should have kept my mouth shut. Shadow Queen you, finally, we're telling the truth. Now we see what's real. The mindfuck is that the same disruption that terrifies your inner critic is often the exact doorway your Shadow Queen has been plotting behind the scenes. In episode 73, we talked about integration as bringing your inner ecosystem into coherence. But coherence doesn't happen by sprinkling light over lies. It happens when the Shadow Queen kicks out the foundations built on pretending. So think of it this way. If your life is a house, the inner critic loves a neat, curated living room where everything looks polished. The Divine Guide wants the whole house to be structurally sound and soul aligned. The Shadow Queen, she's the building inspector with zero tolerance for rot. If there's mold behind the walls, she's pulling panels off. If the foundation is cracked, she's calling for demolition, not a new coat of paint. On the outside, that looks like chaos. On the inside, it's mercy. If you're listening to this and thinking, Mahara, my life already feels like a construction site. Are you telling me this disaster is spiritual? I'm not saying every hardship is divinely orchestrated or that we should romanticize pain. I'm not doing that. Life can be deeply unfair, and some disruptions are simply awful. But I am saying this. With many of the disruptions that you did not choose, and many that you did, there is a hidden intelligence. There's an invitation. The Shadow Queen is asking, what truth is this chaos revealing? What was I unwilling to admit until this broke open? What no longer fits, no matter how hard I try to squeeze back into it? The temptation is to rush back to normal, quotation marks, to patch over cracks with gratitude and spiritual bypassing or busyness, to rebuild the same life on the same shaky foundation and call it healed. But then the cycle repeats, because what you actually long for is not normal. It's true to you. And truth, especially after integration, may require disruption. This is why some of you feel restless after you start doing this inner work. Episode 73 woke up your wholeness. You started seeing how the Shadow Queen, Inner Critic, and Divine Guide can collaborate. And then suddenly, your tolerance for fake conversations, misaligned work, and self-abandoning habits just plummeted. That's not you getting too sensitive. That's you finally calibrated to your soul. Okay, how do we work with disruption instead of panicking, numbing out, or burning everything down in dramatic fashion? Because this is important. Sacred disruption is not the same as scorched earth. Okay, chaos as cure is not you flipping tables for sport or bulldozing your life out of boredom. Sacred disruption is actually intentional, conscious, anchored. It might be messy, but it's rooted in truth and guided by your divine intelligence. So let's walk through a few ways to recognize and work with it. First of all, notice where you secretly crave disruption. This is the part you don't tell most people. The fantasy of quitting mid-meeting, the urge to not attend the family event where you always shrink, the desire to burn the old nice girl script and see what happens if you just say what you mean. Well, instead of judging those impulses, get curious. What's the pattern underneath? For example, if you keep imagining walking away from your old role, what part of that fantasy feels like relief? Is it the freedom to be creative, to rest, to not be responsible for everyone else's emotional climate? Your Shadow Queen often uses restless fantasies to get your attention. She's whispering, something here is done. Can we please admit that? Okay, second, ask yourself, is this breakdown or breakthrough? Interesting. Look at the disruption through 3 lenses. Through the inner critic, this is all my fault, I failed, I should have tried harder. Through the Shadow Queen, where is the lie here? What have I been tolerating? Where have I abandoned myself? And through the Divine Guide, what is this making possible? What's being cleared that I could not clear on my own? When you intentionally shift between those lenses, you stop collapsing into shame and you start seeing choice. You start moving from victim of chaos to co-creator with it. Third, practice micro disruptions on purpose. Yes, you heard me. Not everything has to be a full tower moment, right? Your nervous system will thank you. Just take the little steps. Micro disruptions are small, deliberate acts where you stop playing the old role. Saying no to something you usually auto-agree to, for example. Telling the truth one layer deeper in a conversation. Leaving a room when the energy feels off instead of staying to manage everyone else's comfort. It's pulling the sacred no card in your mind and honoring it in real time. These tiny disruptions send a message to your system. We are allowed to change. We are allowed to choose differently. We don't need a full crisis to pivot. Okay, fourth, create containers for healthy chaos. If something in your life is clearly done, but you're terrified of the fallout, bring intention into it. Get some support. Journal with your shadow queen. Ask her, hey, if I stopped pretending everything was fine, what would I do next? What would I say? What would I end, renegotiate, or leave? Then bring your divine guide in. How can I do this in a way that honors my nervous system, my responsibilities, and my future self? When Shadow Queen and Divine Guide sit at the same table, disruption becomes surgical instead of random. Finally, anchor your body. Chaos feels different when you're resourced. When your life is rearranging itself, your inner critic will convince you that you don't have time for breath, for walks, for grounding, for ritual. Well, just ignore her on this one. Regulate, then reevaluate. Even now, wherever you are, if it's safe to do so, soften your shoulders, unclench your jaw. Take a slow, deep breath in through your nose and sigh it out through your mouth. Imagine your shadow queen stepping up beside you, not as a wrecking ball, but as a fierce ally. See her hand resting gently on your back as you stand in the rubble of what used to be, and hear her say, you're not losing yourself, sweetheart. You're losing what was never really yours. Then imagine your divine guide standing in front of you, lantern in hand maybe, illuminating one next step. Not the whole staircase, just the next true step. Well, that is how sacred disruption moves, one honest step at a time. I want to name something else. Sometimes you will cling to the familiar until life disrupts it for you. The job ends, the relationship shifts, the plan doesn't work. That doesn't mean you failed at alignment. It means the divine was willing to do what you weren't ready to do yet. You're not being punished. You're being invited. And your only job is to ask, what is this asking me to finally see? Who am I becoming on the other side of this? How can I honor my humanity while I walk through it? See, you're allowed to grieve the old while saying yes to the new. Shadow Queen work is not emotional perfection. Please don't think that. It is emotional honesty. And Integration Nation isn't about having all your parts sit quietly at the table forever. It's about knowing who to listen to. When? When disruption arrives, let your inner critic have her say. Let her cry, worry, catastrophize, all those things. Then thank her for trying to protect you. Invite the Shadow Queen to speak. Ask her what truth she's insisting on. Then call forward your divine guide to show you the compassionate, aligned way to respond. That, my friends, is Trinity leadership. Okay, before we close, I want to offer you a simple reflection you can work with this week. Take some time to journal on 3 questions. 1, where in my life does it already feel like chaos? And what truth might this chaos be revealing? 2, where do I secretly crave disruption? And what does that craving tell me about what I'm done tolerating? 3, if my Shadow Queen pulled the Throne Retrieval or Sacred Rage card for me today, what would she be asking me to stop pretending about? And let whatever comes up be enough. Don't over-edit it. No spiritual performance, just raw, honest truth. Then, when you feel ready, ask your divine guide, what is one small, grounded step I can take in honor of this truth? Not 10 steps, not a 10-year plan, just one step. What makes sense? Okay, integration is not a theory, it's a practice. And sometimes the most integrated thing you can do is let the old structure fall so that something more honest can stand. So if your life feels shaky right now, if the pieces aren't lining up the way they used to, if you feel like you're walking through a season labeled disruption, I want you to remember this. Chaos is not always a curse. Sometimes it's the sound of your soul rearranging the furniture. Sometimes it's the Shadow Queen sliding the old script out of your hands and saying, love, we're done with this. Sometimes it's the divine guide taking what you built for survival and turning it into soil for your becoming. You're not broken for needing to disrupt patterns that kept you safe but small. You're not dramatic for wanting a life that fits the truth of who you are now. You're not behind for having to rebuild after a season of collapse. You are in it. You are evolving. You are being invited into a deeper level of sovereignty. And the disruption you secretly crave is not about burning your life down. It's about burning down the lie that you have to live disconnected from yourself to be loved, successful, or safe. Your shadow queen knows better. Your inner critic is learning. And your divine guide already sees the version of you who has walked through this fire and woven something beautiful from the ashes. Trust that version, because she's closer than you think. Thanks for listening to MINDFUCKS with Mahara. If you want more depth between episodes, come join me on Substack. And if you're feeling called, explore the Trinity Oracle deck on my website, www.mindfulnesswithmahara.com. Here's to you.